All right, the last thing that I wanted to talk about was ProBuilder and ProGrids. After we talk about this stuff, um, I'm pretty sure you guys can like go off and explore and like just kind of tinker around and do stuff yourself for a little while before we explore more advanced stuff later on. But I'm not going to have a lot of time, so I just wanted to leave you with this last one. That's pretty important just to really get you guys on your way building and creating stuff. So like how I created this scene and this geometry and all this stuff is with ProBuilder, and I'll show you how to use that. So right here, you can see this kind of grid pattern. That's the default texture and material for ProBuilder and anything that you make in ProBuilder. And it helps you with spacing and sizing and all that kind of stuff. So what you want to do first is if you're very first starting a new project, you won't have ProGrids and ProBuilder installed. So you would have to go to your Windows Package Manager, and anytime you open any new project, you have to import your packages that you're going to be using in that project. So a lot of the time, I go right when I start a new project. Oh, see, I have packages, my assets. I need to be in Unity Registry. So I usually go right to ProBuilder right away, right when I do a new project, and install that. For me, I already have it installed, so it will tell me to remove. But I don't want to do that. You'll need to install this if you don't have it. If you do, good. The next thing that I like to use is called ProGrids, and it's right here. Now, something to note with the package manager in newer versions of Unity is if this doesn't show up, you can see that's because it's a preview package. Preview packages are kind of like, you can think of them as like early access or like beta testing. But ProGrids has been around for so long, it's basically stock coming with Unity, like everyone uses it, but it doesn't show up in some of the searches. So what you have to do is click this little gear icon, go to Advanced Project Settings, and then this little thing, Enable Preview Packages, make sure that that box is ticked. So once that's set, you can type in ProGrids and it should pop up for you, as well as any of the other preview packages that you see tutorials on or end up trying to use just for the fun of it. So you would make sure that that's installed or updated. I have it in, so that's good. The next thing that you want to do is ProGrids might already be there once you install the package. If it's not, you can go to Tools, ProGrids, ProGrids window, and that would bring it out. So that's what you do for ProBuilder as well. Go to Tools, ProBuilder. I know it's kind of hard to remember because you would think, oh, window, I need to get my ProBuilder window. Well, it's in Tools, ProBuilder window. When you first pull this out, it might have text like this. Some people like this type of thing if you like are good with text and like knowing all that stuff, or if you learned that way. But I learned by using the icon mode. So you right click, use icon mode, and then I usually dock it down here at the bottom of my scene, just so I have access to all of the stuff while I'm building. And the icons are a lot easier for me to really quickly visually see and understand. I know what they all mean over time just by using them. So once you have that there and everything's all set up, your ProGrids is what helps us snap to the grids and that kind of stuff. So you can see my numbers are a little weird. That's the snap increment. If you set it to 1, this is the standard. So now, if you were to create a 3D object cube, and you were to move that around, you can see that it's snapping based off of, it's not going to match my grid here because this is geography that I've like built and stretched, so sometimes the texture doesn't always match up with what you have. But if we were to make this in a spot that had, let's say, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So you can see here 0, 0, 0 is actually right there in the center of those four. But if you do smaller increments, like let's say 0.5, that's half. Now we can snap it to what I have here. Even though it's not a one-to-one scale, you can still use the snapping that way by changing the increment and like match what you have. So that's where ProGrids comes into place, is it just helps you do snapping and all that kind of stuff. Now to use ProBuilder, to create a cube, you would right click and normally do your 3D objects and do all that stuff, but you're very limited in what you can use just with the stock Unity, just these things here. And then you can't expand on them. So with ProBuilder, if you click this here, it's just going to make a cube. So you actually want to hold the Alt key and then click it. And that brings up your ProBuilder window here. I have a cube that is very tiny. It's right here, you can see. This isn't built yet, so this is just the preview. We're going to set that to 1, 1, 1. So now that's the same as the other cube that we had before, and we click build. We close this. So now that's the cube we just built, but this is a ProBuilder cube, so it has different functionality. It still works with our ProGrids, so we can still snap it to where we want. So you have these buttons up here at the top. This one here is your object selection. So that's where you can move the whole object that you're trying to edit. The one next to it is your vertices. So these are going to be your individual points. So like that's the point at the end of that. That's the point at the end of there. And this you can move individually. So that's how you can make these weird shapes or do different stuff like that by controlling the vertices. If you just wanted to select these two there and turn it into a ramp, you can pull it in, and there you go. Next one would be the edge selection, and that's the whole line. So you can do the same thing there by moving the line back, because this is essentially you doing those two vertices together anyway. But sometimes you want to move like a whole wall or different stuff like that, or you want to move these two things here in some way that would be weird, you know, who knows. Next thing is the face selection, and that's where you select the entire face. And this is where you can do cool stuff like extruding and pulling in and out and all that kind of stuff. So if we wanted to start building something like an archway, you would start here with your cube. Let's say we wanted to make it even a little bit smaller. Now, this also goes along with ProGrids too. So if I were to pull this in, you can see that it actually shortened the cube by 0.5, so half. And let's select this face and pull that in this way. So now we're 1/4 of the original cube there. If we select this face here, we can start to bring it up. And you can see the ProBuilder texture does help with the increments. That's how you can do measurements and all that kind of stuff. So maybe I wanted to end right there. Now the next thing to know that we can do is a trick. If you hold shift and then move it up, we can see that it actually creates a line where you held shift. And that basically cut the faces. So now there's new faces here, and that's the old faces. If we didn't do it that way, and instead just drug it up to here and had those two faces, you can grab your edge selection. You can select a line that you want to cut perpendicular to. And then there's one of these buttons down here, I believe, not the selection. I know the hotkey for it, so I'm just trying to remember the button. Insert edge loop here. think that's it. Is that it? Yeah. Okay, so insert edge loop. Now you have this little perpendicular cut, and you can pull that up and create the faces where you want it to be that way. But for me, I think it's much quicker to, if I know that I want to have, if I know that I want to have it be here, I'll just move it down, hold shift, and go back up to there, and then that already did the cut. But sometimes when you're building something, you just need to know how to do that manual cut. So then you can hold shift here. Well, actually, I'm not going to hold shift. If I just pull this, you can see it pulls the face, so it actually pulls that along with it too. And maybe that's the shape that you're going for. But if it's not, you would hold shift to extrude. And now you don't have to hold shift anymore. You can just move this individually because you started that new thing. And let's say we want it to go right to there. And then again, hold shift and do your thing there. So when I held shift and did one more block, it did that line cut to make a new face. So now I'm going to go underneath. There's my new face. Grab that one, hold shift, pull it down, and just kind of let it go until it goes there. So now we have an archway. If we go back to our object selection, you can move it around. You can do whatever you want with it. This object has its mesh renderer. This is the material. You can change that to be different material. Let's change it to be wood. Now it's wooden. And it does have collision. Now, a mesh collider is going to put collision on the mesh itself. So that will let you pass through this area if you were the ball, but bump into the sides, so it would work as a as an archway. But if you were to build something and you wanted it to have physics functionality, you would need to add a rigid body. And in adding a rigid body, it doesn't play well with mesh colliders because it's a lot of physics data to calculate all the individual, curves and that kind of stuff, especially when you've built an object that's much more complicated than this. So if you're ever going to add physics, it needs to have a mesh collider that is called convex. And if you trigger it to be convex, all that does is it changes the collision to be the easiest and simplest. But unfortunately, you can see the collision lines here. They're kind of faint in the shadow. I'll turn off the light, or turn it off, I guess. It put collision here, so now the ball wouldn't be able to pass through. But this whole thing would fall over with physics like a plank of wood. There's other options you can do to get what you're after, but we won't need to talk about that right now. But for now, you can see that it has collision and all that kind of stuff, and we built this little archway. It's kind of the same thing as the pen over there, but you can start doing pretty complex stuff if you hold Alt on there, and instead of cube, you have all these other options. There's stairs, archways, cones. Pipe is a cool one. That's very large. Let's go 1 and 1. Thickness 1. Let's do 1 for everything. Well, not number of sides. Build. Alright, so here's the pipe. And this is how you can do different stuff. So you would grab your face selection. This lets you select faces through. So it'll select the stuff on the inside and the back. And if you just want to select a certain number of faces, do this little cancel one so it doesn't go through. And you can select all of those top faces there. This little button is useful. This merges them into one. So now you have that one face, and then that's how you can start creating your pipe. And some tricks that you can do is the same thing, holding shift to make a new section, and then switching over to the scale and actually making it bigger, then switching back to movement, holding shift and going up, and going back to shift again to make another edge cut, and do the scale on the other end. I know that was a little bit, but that's kind of how you can make like more complex shapes. And then you could pick just this one and pull it out and just start making all these weird things just by experimenting with ProBuilder that way. Another cool thing about ProBuilder is this little brick button here, Material Editor. It brings up this window. You can pull it down to the bottom, and this is where you can actually store all of your materials while you're building out the stage and all of the elements. So as you can see here, I have gray, brown, green. So what's cool about that is you can select individual faces of stuff and then select one of your colors, green. So now just that part of your object is green. You might have been thinking like, okay, well I can drag this and make it pink, but like how do I individually? Well, this is how. So you would take these and make that red or orange or red. Yeah, there you go. And that's how you can start painting the walls with one texture, and then painting the floor with like brick or ground or rock or whatever. Make the walls brick, all that kind of stuff. This face here is angled. So right now it's based off of the world geography, straight up, right, that kind of stuff. So if I were to extrude this out, it's going to extrude it straight to the left and it'll still keep that angle. But if I didn't want to do that and I wanted to follow the curvature of this angle, there's this little world positioning here. It says global. You click that until you can see it actually right here is the normal of the face itself. So if we extrude that, it'll actually come out in the angle that it's shaped in. And that's how you can do weird angling and that kind of stuff there. But if you wanted to do it manually, you can also do the rotation and change the rotation of the face. You can do the same thing with lines. If you were to grab this line edge, you can rotate just that edge for weird stuff. And then I wanted to talk one last thing about texturing. I know we haven't really gotten into this kind of stuff, but if you have advanced textures that like actually have shape to them, like if you're exploring and you're not just using green, you're using wood or something like that, you can kind of see here that it's like a little bit of a cut off there. Like this is where the repeating texture is, and like it looks kind of okay, but also it looks kind of bad. So something you could do is grab these entire faces here, like this whole one there, if you wanted to make it all that. And then if you want this all to be one coherent chunk of wood is what I'm trying to say. There's this UV editor, and if you pull that up, this is your texture. This is the square that you keep seeing repeating. And if we zoom out a little bit, this is the face that I've selected. This is like the back of it. These are the sides. This is the front that I've selected, just those faces there. So what we can do is actually move that down so that it matches the center right about here. Oops. Oops. To move around these menus and stuff, and a lot of menus in Unity, you can use the scrolling wheel to zoom in and out, and then click the scrolling wheel to drag around. So once we have this here, also if you're ever like trying to move something and the gizmo, you click away from it, or like you lost it on accident, you can just Control Z and get the gizmo back to be able to move it again. And that's also works in the editor too. Like if you accidentally are moving something and you click something else, just Control Z and it'll come back. Or if you're selecting faces and you accidentally click and you lost all your faces, Control Z and you'll get them all back. So that's pretty cool. So then we're gonna go to scale, change the scale. Actually, sorry, I forgot one thing. The faces are separated. So we do want to group selected faces as one group. So now, when we change the scale, they go together. And if I snap that there, so it's pretty much all within the wood texture, and come back, you can see that now it's stretched a little bit, but the whole area that we assigned is matching that one texture area. And that can help if you have textures that aren't seamless. Like some textures are seamless where they can just keep repeating and you never see the difference. But sometimes you need to change or move things around or adjust however you want them to be. This also works if you have a texture that has like, I don't know, like a clock, and the clock has a face and the face has like hands on it. That's just texture. And you have a circle. You would click the circular face and then move the clock hands texture around so that it matches up right in the center. And that's how you do it. So that's just another cool thing about ProBuilder. There's lots of stuff. It's really great. That's how I pretty much build and model all of my assets for my other projects and that kind of stuff. One final pro tip is that, let's say you're moving these things around and you're not snap to grid, or it's just for whatever reason you're moving them around and they're not lining up correctly, and you're like, oh man, I just really want this edge to line up with that edge. Well, thankfully there's a hotkey to do that. Basically, you have the two edges that you want to line up together. You can think of them as like point A and point B. And as long as you have the object selection ready to go, and as long as you have the move tool, so you're not in scale or anything like that, move tool. If you hold down the V as in Victor key, you can see as soon as I hold it down and move the mouse around, it goes to the point that it thinks I'm trying to look at. So if you hold V, you get this point, hold it down in the center of this little box. And then as you move V around, it'll snap to any of the various points that you can see in your scene. So snap it right to there, let go of the mouse, let go of V, and now it's perfectly in line with, now it's perfectly in line with that edge, and that's what you were going for. If that's what you were going for. Final tip, all right.